We're late. We apologize. We are late. Dadgum tech, bro.
I know.
Stinking
What
dadgum tech.
I don't
And I
even
don't.
know. I don't know what to do. It's
I
like
know.
it's so for those of you that might be that watch this this is the first thing that you're gonna see when we go live. I had this morning I clicked on and when I clicked my audio. And when I clicked my audio, it immediately changed. You know what? I wonder if it was picking up my audio from my phone.
Might have been.
And so when I clicked my audio to my studio recording equipment, the audio sounded amazing, but then it switched my video to like my iPhone like desktop view or mirror view or something. And I couldn't get it back. So anyway,
It's a deal. You ready for this?
yeah.
The gram is working today.
See,
After
some
a 2-week
technology.
hiatus, bro. And listen, I'm telling you right now. So, like, I went in and tried to figure out what can I do to fix it and whatever.
Right.
I didn't do jack diddle on it. I didn't do a dadgum thing.
It fixed itself.
And it's working beautifully
That's
on
awesome.
the gram. So welcome to all those that are watching on the gram. Let me see one thing real quick here.
I was listening to a radio show. It's a local radio show. And the guy was talking
a
about
local radio show.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. And his tagline is locally grown, seriously funny. And
nice.
And so he was talking about TikTok. He said, so we've been trying to get on TikTok. He said, and as you know, he said, I've never had TikTok. I'm new to TikTok. He said, and so we tried to go live, and he said, you got to have 1,000 followers. And he said, I made a couple of phone calls, sent a couple of emails, explained, what we are and what we do. We're not just random TikTokers. And he said, and lo and behold, he said, we were able to get a TikTok stream without having to have 1,000 followers. He said, so show some love. He said, go ahead and follow me on TikTok. Yeah. I mean, he's on the big local talk show or talk station. And so I don't know. I mean, we're like, maybe we could send an email.
Bro. See, that's what I guess that's what I need to do.
Yep.
Didn't even know that was a thing that you could do, but here we go.
I have no doubt with your customer service skills, you'll be able to somehow arrange it.
Like my conversation with Avis the other night.
Oh my goodness.
Listen, we won't. I won't put a company on blast because we ended up getting it all worked out. But it was. I gave him a little bit. Can I be honest?
Mm-hmm.
Can I be honest? I did. I gave him a little bit of a lecture about customer service. I'm not gonna lie.
You did?
I did.
You said to him, sir, can I talk to you about something?
I did. I did one of those things where I busted out, that I worked in customer service for all those years. And, I did all of that. And this is not the way you treat people. It's just not the way you do it. So I just had that little bit of a conversation with him. So
yeah, you're like, look, if I were doing your training and I was listening to this video,
yes, that's exactly right. It's recorded.
This is what I would tell you.
Yes.
And then and here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen, sir. When this recorded phone conversation gets to your trainer's going to be like, he was right. You should have been doing what he told you.
Right. Exactly. All right. You want to give us a Chief Meteorologist, Ken Bistarkey weather report here at the Mobilized Church Podcast on the 9s.
Ken Bistarkey, Chief Meteorologist, checking in today saying it's 35 degrees with a high of 45 in Northeast Ohio. Burr.
Freezing.
Is it April?
Freezing, man. It was beautiful days, beautiful day. this was Sunday. It was gorgeous, beautiful. And then the storms came.
Mm.
I understand. I think
That sounds like
our
a black gospel
friends.
song starting right there. Then the rain came and the
Hello,
storm blew.
hello, no doubt,
You hear a
man.
Hammond organ in the background. Mm.
I think our friends in Central Illinois got blasted, which I know that's not a surprise. They get blasted, I think, every time there's tornadoes coming through. So that's
Yeah.
norm. That's par for the course for them. So yeah. Hey, Mr. CM Fallout gives us a shout out on YouTube. Good to
What's
see.
up?
Good
What's
to
up,
see Mr.
CM
CM.
Fallout? Little Fallout.
A little Fallout. That's what I'm talking about. Hey,
Feels like feels like 23, says Ken. Chief meteorologist Ken Starkey saying the feel like temperature is in
23.
my my heavens. Oh my
No,
heavens.
no golfing today, bro. No golfing today.
No.
No golfing today. All right, so we're a little bit behind. You want to just go and just
Let's
let's
go.
go do it.
Let's go. We have to, folks. Sorry, technical difficulties. Gee, Manitli.
It's unbelievable.
The video was, yeah, the video was nuts. It switched over to something. Who knows what it was? And yeah, Finding Nemo.
Nemo. What's up, Nemo?
Nemo has been found, so it's just Nemo now.
It is, and it's a cat with wearing headphones. I think is the. I think that's what.
Nice.
Over there. See, here's the deal, Nemo. You're gonna have to hang on about 2 more minutes to find out what we're talking about.
That's
today.
right. Right. But I do like your focused feline.
The focused feline. That's awesome. All right, you ready to go live?
Yay.
Let's do it. Let's go. Here we go.
Yay.
3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham Jr. the third. And Ken, today is, while we're recording this live, so this is a live recording. While we're recording this live, this is one of my least favorite days on the calendar. I'm a super positive guy. I'm going to make the positive out of it. But there literally is no reason for April Fool's Day.
You know, I did get April Fool today, and I almost, as I was going online, I got an email, and it is a company called Cali Golf.
All right.
And they are a upstart. They make they say premium quality clubs at a fraction of the cost. And they said it came out and said, big news. We just signed our first tour pro, and it's mammoth. And it had a picture of Justin Thomas. And it said he will be playing the Cali OT1s in the Masters next week. And then it says, ready for this. And then it said, April Fools. And then it says, we don't pay pros. That's how we keep our costs down. And I'm like, oh,
got you.
Good. Well played. Well played, Cali Golf. In fact, if you'd like to be a sponsor of this program, we'll sponsor you. Just send us a set of clubs each, and we'll actually do a separate podcast with a full review. Let's tag them.
Absolutely. I'm definitely down with that. I got fooled today. There was a tech or a tweet, X, whatever, a post on X that said that Brad Underwood had stepped down as the head coach, University of Illinois. And I just stopped right there. I'm like, what in the world? And so then you read on, it was pure nonsense. But my first reaction was like, oh no, go check out and see like this. What are the sources saying? What's happening? I just don't get it. I don't understand like what enjoyment do people possibly get out of just lying? Just pure lying, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I would think that maybe back, perhaps back in the Puritan days, when people basically felt like they would, even the simplest of lie would take you to hell. And they're like, hey, here's a free day, a free lie day.
So
Maybe it was fun then. I don't know.
being the nerd that I am, I did go chat GPT it and find out the history. And so there's a couple different explanations. The introduction of the Gregorian calendar moved from the end of March to January. And there were people, this is one theory, people either refused to believe it or they refused to accept it. And so they were referred to as April Fools. And so people made fun of them and whatever. There's also some stuff about like some Roman festivals that they would flip like cultural norms for the day and whatever. So bottom line is it's a bunch of just garbage is what it is. So am I sounding like grumpy old man today? I'm not meaning to.
No.
I don't get it.
Hey, we need our people, the people who get out and they go crazy about, Christmas, it wasn't the real day Jesus was born. Or like Easter, like it's a festival to Ishtar. It's we need all of our.
Is that how you have to say that? You have to
Yeah,
say it that way.
you do. That's the way you have to say it, because that's the way. That's my
Yes.
that's my interpolation of the spirit within which it's
I
said.
believe it. I
Like-
totally believe it.
Like we got all these churches out there, all out there hunting Easter eggs and paganism. Like that.
I
That's
love
their
it.
spirit.
Yeah, that's what they say. That's exactly what they
So
say.
we need the purists on here being like, they need to be on here
Yeah.
like April Fool's Day is basically
Yes.
the devil's day because he was the first liar and the start of the father of all lies. And so church
Roman
people-
culture, flipping it upside down, full of
Yeah.
lies. Yeah, I like that. That's awesome. Well, maybe we could have some.
Where are our purists? That's what I want to know.
Where are the purists? Maybe people put. Maybe we could have a little contest and have people put in like their best UPC April Fools. No, don't do that.
DKB lost a bet and got his head shaved. Bald guys unite. He's starting a new.
He started a new movement. Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. All right. Well, so before we get started,
Scott Graham and David Bernard are going to be on Survivor.
Oh man, we should never go down this road. You know what's gonna happen is we're gonna end up doing the offering again at General Conference. That's what's gonna happen. That's what these turn into.
Like, here's what you guys get. Oh crud. Golly, I sound like a. Speaking of which, I feel like I need a. Oh man, I feel like I need a breathing treatment. I've been having this
Lucky
cold.
Strike no filters you've been smoking, man.
I sound like a
sound
chain smoker, like Taxman, me and Taxman.
For real, ladies and gentlemen, the new sponsor for the Mobilized Church Podcast, Lucky No Filters. Can you give us the reason?
That's so great, bro. Oh shucks.
That's awesome. Oh man. Oh goodness. Well, I'm glad we went down that rabbit trail.
Yeah.
Oh man. So before we get started for real, we do want to give a shout out to
you did. You're 3, 2, 1 it, bro.
I know.
We may need to restart.
As we do a reset. We do a reset here. We're gonna do a quick reset.
Yeah.
We do want to give a shout out to our peeps. We never mind. We shout out to our peeps at Launch Church Planning Conference, which was man, we had a great time getting connected with a bunch of church planners, and that was really the best part of the whole thing, was just being able to talk to church planners who are heroes, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to just share a little bit about what we do there at Launch. And so shout out to Scott Sistrunk, Scott Armstrong, Jimmy Tony, David McGovern, all the guys, Jamil McLaurin, like just all the great peeps. So with that, Ken, we did a podcast recording for
Oh,
the North
yes.
American Missions podcast that's going to be coming out. We don't have a release date on it just yet,
Yeah.
but
I
man, we had a
think
great time on
they
that one.
said ours, yeah, they said ours might take a little bit more editing time than most.
That is accurate. That is accurate. There's no doubt that they told us what, like 45 minutes, and then
Yes.
like we barely got anywhere, and the guy's holding up the 50-minute sign and
Yeah.
telling us we need to end it. So, they just here's the deal. It's like Dan Patrick used to say, you can't stop him, you can only hope to contain him. That's
Hey,
us.
but Brother Armstrong told me, he said, honestly, he said, some of the other ones felt like it was time to shut it down. And he said, yours felt like we could go another hour.
100%. It was
I
good.
like,
We had a good time.
yeah, it was
We had
good.
a really good time. So shout out on that, and we will pass along more information on that. So, hey, go when it comes out, go give them a follow. The North American Missions podcast. Give that a follow as they launch that out, and give a listen to it. So support all of our North American missionaries, Ken.
Man, North American missionaries are absolute heroes. And you know what? I think one of the things they point out is that our mission field is right here in our backyard. Not
Yeah,
only not only in the fact that we're seeing this sort of a proliferation of immigration into the country, where many of the nations are here, right here with us, and there's a great opportunity. But also, I think it shows and demonstrates that our mission field is not somewhere else,
yeah.
and so they're doing the hard work of reaching some of the unreached and underreached places around us. And so we appreciate all the great work that UPCI North American Missions, Scott Sistrunk is the director, and all his team are doing. And launch was amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think today's conversation, I think it's a good segue into the conversation today, because I do think it flows out of, Ken,
Yeah,
some of the things that we had conversations with church planners, and just kind of talking about some of the models and different ideas for church planning.
right.
So I'm gonna just kind of I'm gonna do like a real brief
Do
setup,
it. Do it.
and then I'm gonna let you get us launched today on, see what I did there? Get us launched
Hmm.
on the topic. And so basically what we want to address, what we want to talk about today is, so how where my brain went, kind of thinking about this, Ken, and connected to launch,
Yeah.
was, when Jesus built his team,
Hmm.
when Jesus
Yes.
called the people to
Yep.
follow him,
Yep.
baked into the culture
Yes.
was the mission, right?
Very
There
much
there
so.
there was no strategy, like, it wasn't a derived strategy of, "Hey, we've gotta make sure that we cultivate this," or whatever. Like, it was just it was inextricably linked into the Jesus culture, the Jesus movement that happened
Hmm.
in the early church. So today what we wanna talk about is how, as pastors, leaders, church planners, missionaries, missional disciple makers, how do we get in us, in our culture, in our churches, just a natural impulse toward Jesus? Talk to us about that, what that means, and then kind of we'll start picking through this of why this was and what this means for us.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, as you said that, and you're talking about sometimes we don't look at it from the perspective that, we just think Jesus was asking some random people to come follow me.
Mhm.
Jesus, but there had to be some level of intentionality, right? Like there had to be some what Jesus was doing. If we had an opportunity to sit down with Jesus, it would be an interesting conversation as we ask and discuss with him, Lord, can you give us some insight? Like the question, if he was on the podcast, Lord,
Yeah.
could you give us some insight on some of the criteria that you used to choose your team? that would be an interesting question, wouldn't it?
It would be
Like,
very interesting.
what was it that, because I can think of, if I were trying to do it, um, who I would want,
Sure.
what people I would want on the team, what kind of characteristics, obviously I would want to, I would, I would want people that would be like, movers and shakers. We got to have somebody on here that's, that's an expert in this and so on.
Yeah.
And yet what it feels like, what it seems like is that Jesus almost selects people that wouldn't fall into many people's, list.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, um, it it leads us to a place where we would say, did Jesus choose people? Did he involve people in such a way that the that the mission was so focused on Jesus that these people, by their interactions, they were moldable, they were malleable, that they were impressionable,
Yeah.
and that Jesus just simply became to them, he's the focus.
Yeah.
We we I'm not bringing anything to the table here. I'm just glad to be in the room.
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
even know. Like, I could imagine like the disciples saying like, I don't even know why Jesus chose me, to be honest.
Sure. Sure.
And yet it is this group, these type of people that Jesus uses and transforms the world with them.
Yeah, and you see, I think one of the first things you see out of it is, and this is why we talk so much about, before you can make disciples, you have to be the disciple. You see so much the impact of the transformation of people, of Jesus coming into people's lives,
Hmm.
right? It radically transformed everything about them. And here's the thing, not all of them were lepers, right? Not all of them had these, like, horrendous illnesses,
Yeah. Right.
diseases.
Right.
Not a
Right.
not all
Right.
of them were blind. Not all of them
That's a
were
good point.
deaf. Not all, like, you know, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Now, it may not have been, the ideal, but they had a business, they had family, they had
Mhm.
things happening in this life, and then Jesus comes along and he gives them an invitation to something bigger. He gives them the invitation to come and to be a part of something bigger. "Follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men." Matthew, the tax collector, calls him out of that, and there was something attractive about Jesus that just drew
Mhm.
people in to them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think there was an element of, like you said, just the, of course, so, like, John Mark Comer's book, Practicing the Way, talks
Bro,
about.
bro. Next statement that I was going to make, I wrote it down.
Was it really?
Were you?
Well,
Let me ask you this: were you going to say that in Comer's book that by the time that you, by the time that you're the age of these disciples, you would have been selected to follow it if you
yeah,
were at the head of the class? If you,
yeah.
yeah,
You
and
over. You were passed over, right?
yeah,
You were
yeah.
passed over, and so here these guys thought their moment and their time was gone, and Jesus comes along and says, "Follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. Follow me and be my disciples." Like, that was a tremendous honor to them, and so you see, that piece all along the way. My point is, all along the way, people that Jesus called experienced the level of transformation, Ken, that just produced something inside of them that said, "We wanna go tell everybody. We wanna go tell everybody the things that Jesus is doing and has
Yeah.
done and who he is and what we've witnessed and what we've seen." And if we're being really transparent, a lot of that has been, I don't wanna say eliminated, but it's been more minimized in our culture and in our world. Some of it is, you know, we're like the church in Revelation where we think we have no needs. We've got everything taken care of. Everything's all good. But in reality, we're blind, we're naked, we're destitute, we're hungry. And so we have to get back, I think, to that awe and the wonder of the
Mhm.
reality of like what an unbelievable just almost unable to articulate how amazing
Mhm.
it is that Jesus gives us the invitation. We were not a people. We shouldn't be a part of this, and yet Jesus gives us the invitation. And your life may not be totally and completely jacked up. It may not be, you may not be strung out on drugs and the worst of the worst. But the reality is, all of us need that transformation, and it should produce something inside of us that says, "I want everybody to know about the transformation in my life."
Yeah. The awe, that sense of awe is evident. I think the sense of awe was also, I think the sense of awe was also evident in the fact that they were eyewitnesses. Peter says, we didn't declare to you cunningly devised fables.
Yeah,
Um, but these are the things that we were eyewitnesses to.
yeah,
And what's interesting is that, in this, uh, in this explanation of Peter about the things that they had communicated when, because Peter is speaking at this particular juncture to a group of people who might not have ever even seen Jesus.
sure,
And he's
sure,
saying, when we made known to you, well, what was it that they made known? Do you see what I'm saying?
sure.
I think it's interesting for us to say that sense of awe of and about Jesus. I mean, Peter's first words to Jesus were when he said, Jesus said, launch out into the deep. He
Yeah,
borrowed the boat and he preached to the people. And then he launched out into the deep. And the Bible said that there was this great catch of fish. And Peter basically declares, I'm not worthy, man.
yeah,
Like, I'm
yeah,
not worthy.
right.
He's like, depart from me. I'm a sinful man. Uh, and Peter like repeats um, this kind of mantra,
Yeah,
like Peter's declaration over and over is like, we're not worthy. Who is this? What manner of man is this?
yeah,
What
yeah,
that even the sea obeys him, like the wind and
right.
the waves, and who is this guy? And like over and over, they keep getting a revelation of the magnitude of his majesty in like memorable moments of the miraculous.
Yeah,
The magnitude of his majesty in memorable moments of the miraculous, where they recognize and they realize that Jesus is not just he's not just a a revelation factory. He's
yeah,
not just a he's not just a truth dispenser. That there's like they see the incarnation, they see the glory. I think that's why John says, right? John
yeah,
says, and we beheld his glory.
yeah,
And so when you start going back and reading and looking for, right? So like I think it's okay. We talk sometimes about the best biblical interpretation has to happen when we are aware of our bias. Like
sure,
we have to admit our bias. I
sure.
think I think when you go back and you look for the bias, you're looking for, let's look for the prominence of the revelation and the awe of Jesus, and you start seeing it like, wow, John starts his book off with, we beheld his glory. And so,
Mm,
and I think and that's what Peter is saying. Peter's saying, we didn't make up a bunch of stories to get you on the Jesus
yes,
team. We didn't
yes,
we didn't declare a bunch of things to you so that you could join our church. Like, we didn't do a sales. This isn't a sales pitch. We didn't brand it. This
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
branding. We we were eyewitnesses of these things. We saw his majesty, and there was something compelling, not just because a person can make the statement and say, well, Jesus performed miracles. They saw it. Jesus was there in person. No wonder during the earthly ministry of Jesus, he was the focus and the emphasis. He was there. He's not
Right.
there anymore. He's not, but he is
He is.
in the message of the New Testament church post
Absolutely.
resurrection.
Man, absolutely 100%. I think I think for me, probably one of the best examples of this is the woman at the well, right? John 4.
Bro.
And, I mean, because you have a lady who, we all know like the details and she was there at the wrong time, probably was avoiding being being around other ladies and maybe being scrutinized and whatever.
Right, right, right,
All
right,
of those different things. We know all that. And Jesus said, I must needs go through Samaria and
right.
has this interaction, this engagement. And I just looked it up real quick. And one of the things I hadn't really noticed, and I don't know, but it seems like the timing of her conversation with Jesus and the disciples coming back, it seems like there might have been a little bit of overlap there. And maybe even heard the disciples question, like, what in the world are you doing? Why are you talking? But here's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible says that she left, and the Bible says she told the men, I've found the man who told me everything. I've
Mm-hmm.
found the Messiah. Like she
Mm-hmm.
immediately she immediately left. And of course, we know the story. She goes into town, and the next thing you know, they're all coming back to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus says the fields are white already for harvest.
Right.
That, and then one of the great early revivals in the book of Acts happened in the city of Samaria.
Yeah.
Why? Well, it all began with the lady who came in contact with Jesus. He dealt with some of her religious, socio-political views, right? He dealt with some of that, but he also dealt with her personal life, the things that she was going through in her personal life, and the just the glory of who Jesus was
Mm.
produced something inside of her that her immediate reflex was not, man, I need to go join a church. I need to, her immediate reflex was not, I need to be more religious. Her immediate reflex was,
Even by the way,
I'm,
even though, by the way, before you hit your punchline here, even though they discussed all of that,
they discussed
e-
it all.
even though they
Right.
discussed this mountain or that mountain,
Yeah.
she could have very easily gone back to Samaria and said, "Hey, I think I've got a revelation here. It's not this mountain or that mountain, right?"
Right. But her reflex, the Jesus impulse was, I'm just going to go tell everybody I've found the man. I've found the Messiah. And um and that resulted in the response of people coming out
Yeah.
to see Jesus. What would happen? So again,
And let me
yeah.
throw something. And here's the deal. And it wasn't it wasn't just a proclamation. It
No.
wasn't a I
No.
have found him. It
Yeah.
was come
Come and
see a
see.
man.
Come see a man.
It was an invitation that was birthed out of her revelation.
So here's my question, Ken. Here's my
Yeah.
question. Okay, so it seems, and we could go through scenario after scenario, right? Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about Philip and Nathaniel. Like we could go through scenario and scenario where that is the reflex of
Yeah.
people. So maybe you want to talk about that before we go into it. But my question is, why is that not more of the immediate reflex in the modern context?
Yeah.
Why
Well,
why does that not become a natural part of just who we are every day?
yeah, I think that's where we need to go. I do think that's where we need to end up today. And and one of the reason why I think we're spending so much time here sort of highlighting this understanding that, you know, uh that the impulse, and this is the word I really want everybody to just sort of get this word in their head. What was their initial impulse?
Mhm.
Um
Mhm.
the initial impulse is to come check out this one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said before, that's why I said earlier that it would be easy for us to say, for people to say, well, yeah, I mean, obviously the focus in during Jesus's earthly ministry was come see a man, because Jesus was there. He was locatively in their midst. And so come see a man was, let's like Philip and Nathaniel. Philip says to Nathaniel, I think we found him.
Yeah.
Right. And he
Yeah.
said, where did you find him? And where's he from? And he says, he's from Nazareth. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
There's no prophets that come from Nazareth. There's no way the Messiah could come from Nazareth. And Philip's invitation, and I think this is the thing that you cannot discount, that these weren't just a bunch of like either irreligious or biblically inept
Yeah.
people. These were not, here we go. They were not irreligious or unable to recognize or unlearned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is something that is, to me, falls into this category of they knew the scriptures.
Yeah.
They knew what the Bible said. They were trained in these things. Like they'd learned it. This is part of their culture. It would have been easy for Philip to respond to Nathaniel in like a religious, like, well, let's get into that.
Yeah.
Let's
Let's talk
talk
about that.
about that. Let's
Sure.
see what the Bible says about that. What is it? Golly, what's the word when somebody they can't read? It's their oh my word. What's the word? Is that hilarious?
You asked me, I
I
totally
know.
froze, bro.
Help us, our listeners. Yeah, but it's funny because sometimes when we talk about the people that are um, from this era, and we talk about people like the woman at the well, and we talk about these people, and we talk about, sometimes you talk about people that were outsiders, or they weren't, well, yes, they weren't the religious.
Illiterate.
Yeah, right.
Sorry. There we
They
go. Kim
weren't.
Starkey. I think I got it in under the wire
Yeah,
there. So it just hit
yeah.
me.
Right. These were not, even though the Bible said that they were ignorant and unlearned. This,
Yeah.
this is why I wanted this word, because the Bible says they were ignorant and unlearned, but that's a religious weighted
Yeah.
characterization of them, right? They
Yeah.
were right. They were not illiterate. They just simply hadn't been schooled like the Pharisees and whatever. And I think this is important because that tells us that when Philip goes to Nathaniel and Nathaniel has an issue, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to go see somebody from Nazareth for real. Come on. What does Philip do? Let's just go see him.
Mm-hmm.
Come see him. Come see a man. Let's go see him. Let's go. Well, I'll walk with you to Jesus. And I think this is so important for us to understand today, that there's such a focus and emphasis on the person of Jesus Christ
Yeah.
that carries over into the New Testament church, even after his resurrection, when Jesus wasn't there. It's not something that you could just simply say, well, like, sort of dismissively say, well, Jesus was there. It was his earthly ministry. Obviously, Jesus could be the focus of people because he was there. They could take him to Jesus.
Sure.
But even after Jesus's departure, he continues to be the focus, even in the Pauline ministry, even in the
Sure.
Pauline letters.
Right.
Jesus is still the focus. He goes to Corinth and he says, case in point, he said, I didn't come with enticing words. I didn't come with the wisdom that human oration brings. He said, I came to you preaching Christ.
Yeah.
I came purpose to know nothing except Jesus Christ and him crucified. So that Christocentric impulse,
Yeah.
let's even go the Christocentric missional impulse.
Yeah.
Let's take people to Jesus. Continued even after Jesus was physically ascended off the earth. It still continued in the New Testament church.
And I don't think it's by accident that the first thing that you see out of the book of Acts church,
Yeah.
right, is on the way to the temple, and the man by the gate had been there, his whole life, and everybody knew him, asking for alms. And what was the response? Silver and gold, right? We don't have any silver and gold, but this is what I do have. Let me connect you to the power
There you go.
of the name of Jesus. Let me connect you to the source of the power, the glory of the power, because we know what he's able to do. It was right. I can't take you physically to Jesus, but now I've got Jesus living inside of me. Let me connect you to the power of Jesus. And immediately he received his strength. That, what you said, that Christocentric impulse
Yep.
did not end with the death of Jesus.
No,
In
it wasn't. It
actuality,
wasn't just because Jesus was physically present.
correct. In actuality, it actually multiplied out. And, you see everywhere that they went, it created this, it produced this. In Acts chapter 5, it talks about how that word started to spread in the cities around them. And
Mhm.
what did they do? They'd bring people just to let Peter's shadow hit them. What was that? It was I can't take Jesus to you,
Yes.
or take you to him physically,
Yep.
but what you can do is you can still come in contact in contact with him. And that was everything that the disciples did. There was no church growth strategy. There was no, hey, we know we need
Yeah.
to do this to go get new people connected. It was, how do we get people in contact and connected with the glory and the power of Jesus every single place we go, everywhere we go? There was no siloed life. There was no, well, this is my work life. This is my, hobby life, whatever. Like there was no separation from that. It was wherever they went just declaring Jesus. They went declaring his name and his power.
Yep.
That's the thing, Ken, that really produced turning the world upside down, was because they had that missional impulse.
Yeah. And see, this is the thing that it was almost like Jesus said, I've been with you, but I shall be in you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
almost as though the New Testament church sort of was like, um, yeah, I can, while Jesus was here in his earthly ministry, I can take you to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But after Jesus ascends, it's almost like I'm here to bring Jesus to you.
Yeah. Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so, I think, and I think the Christocentric missional impulse is absolutely clear in the New Testament church. I mean,
Sure.
it's like every sermon, Peter preaches on the day of Pentecost, this same Jesus whom you crucified. Stephen preaches about, all of the things, you do kill the prophets and this, but Jesus, God is raised up. And you see that it's over and over, every sermon, every miracle, like you said, such as I have, in the
Mhm.
name of Jesus. And it wasn't, it was almost as though it was not only their Christocentric missional impulse, it was also their life perspective. it
Yes.
it wasn't like it was something that they said, how can we how can we begin to cultivate a more Christocentric missional impulse?
Mhm.
It
Mm.
was it, you know it was in them. It was who they were. It was what their focus was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even after the ascension, the apostles still carried this same desire, right? This They didn't shift to well, Jesus is gone, so now we have to create sort of this religious routine, or the Bible says, Acts 5, right? Acts 5:42, and daily in the temple and in every house they did not cease teaching and preaching Jesus as the Christ.
Right.
The person of Jesus was their message.
Yeah.
The person of Jesus was their method. The person of Jesus was their mission, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like today, that kind of urgency, that purity of message, that purity of method, that purity of mission, that Christ-centeredness in our missional efforts often feels muted.
Sure.
And it's almost like our modern expressions of the mission have been the person of Christ has been replaced by the work of Christ.
Mm.
I-
Mm.
Right?
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
you know, what happens? What happens when the church becomes? What happens when the church leaves a person-centric model? Well, they move to a program-centric.
Yeah.
It moves away from incarnational. It becomes brand driven rather than spirit driven. And when I say brand driven, I'm not talking about that there's anything wrong with having a good logo.
Right.
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong
Sure.
with having a good, having good, clean website.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about any of those things. For crying out loud, have a great website. Have good logo, have good, from a marketing perspective, have good branding. That from the those things are neutral.
Sure.
But the problem is that when we are worried about, like, what's our brand, like
Yeah.
what is your brand as a church? When people think of your church, what do they think of? What is your brand? Okay, New Testament church, our brand is Jesus.
Yeah. Right.
and,
All the time.
and right, and so I just think that's huge, Doc. I
Yeah.
think that
I agree.
as we think about, like the New Testament church versus the modern church, it feels like in North America, for many North American churches, it feels like that the thing that is center stage is the church.
Yeah.
our
Absolutely.
our church this, our church has this, our church does this, our church, come check our church's new building, our church's
Yeah.
new this, da 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 da. What is the drawing card? It's what the church is doing.
Yeah.
And even if what the church is doing for Christ, it's like, well, but what we're doing all of this for Jesus. We're doing this so that people come. We're doing this so people get saved. But my question is, and I want to I want to talk about this. I want to hear your, but I have an example of this, and I want to speak of that, but I want to send it to you now just to hear your feedback and comments on that.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I mean, I think we've I don't think it's difficult to prove, scripturally, all of this. We could go through we've gone through the examples, the woman at the well, Philip and Nathaniel, the Peter and Andrew, James and John, Matthew. You could talk about the people that Jesus would heal.
Yeah.
Reese and I had a conversation the other day about, the how strange it is that Jesus would say to some, "Don't go tell anybody," and then others he would, release them and let them. But what did he do? Even when he told them not to go tell everybody, what did they do?
Yeah.
They went and told everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was just a natural
They
inclination
went and told everybody about Jesus.
about Jesus. And that there's just that natural inclination you see from the very beginning. And so So I don't think we need to spend a whole lot more time trying to validate that, trying to prove
No.
that. I mean, it's pretty evident to me, scripturally and biblically. And then, as you said, throughout the book of Acts, you see that as the centerpiece, the Pauline ministry. You know, I determined to not know anything among you save Christ and Him crucified. Right? It came not with enticing words of man's wisdom, but demonstration of His power. Like all of that. The book of Hebrews. Like, I mean, bro, you go down through
Jesus
every.
is that book of Hebrews is Jesus is the better. Better than
He's the better
angels,
of
better than
everything.
high priest, better than Melchizedek.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus is the better in everything.
Yeah.
And so like we see that very clearly. But I don't think it would be I don't think it would be antagonistic to say that in the modern context, it feels like and it seems like you said that natural inclination, that natural impulse
Mhm.
is not at the forefront. Let me say it that way. I don't wanna say that it's not happening or that it's not there or that people don't feel that way. I do think that there is a lot of that, but you don't see often within. Sometimes you'll see it within, like, people that get brought out of, crack habit or
Mhm. Mhm.
some major addiction or major sin, and they just
Mhm.
go on a tirade, and they just go tell everybody and whatever. But the thing that you see in the New Testament church is it wasn't just like a momentary thing that in that immediate time of getting
Mhm.
your miracle, and then
Mhm.
it was over. It was the culture, it was the nature of the New Testament church. It doesn't feel like and doesn't seem like that is the predominant
Mhm.
thought and culture in the modern context. So the
It does
question,
not feel like it.
so why not? Why not? And what do we do?
I'm gonna coin a phrase.
Oh, I love this. This is
I'm
always good.
I'm gonna coin a phrase. Discipleship is about Christ following.
Okay.
Decisionship is about church joining.
Ooh.
The modern the modern Christian invitation is
Mm.
an invitation to
Mm.
decisionship more than discipleship. I'm coining a phrase, bro. What do you think?
I like it. I just put that in the deal. Discipleship versus decisionship.
So,
I love it.
man, I just think that when we think about that,
Which
it
could go into some of the, religious
yeah,
theology, right? Like
yes,
some doctrinal things, make a decision to follow Jesus. I'm publicly deciding and declaring that
professing
I'm
my
gonna
faith.
professing my faith.
hmm And but discipleship was an abandonment of
Mm.
your like to be a disciple of Jesus when Peter and Andrew and James and John when they abandoned their nets, they abandoned their vocation to
Yeah.
to take up a new vocation.
Yeah.
My story that I told you that I had, and I think that exemplifies this, is I'm familiar with a situation where there's a particular family that joined a church, but they didn't necessarily join the church. They just had a revelation that the church that they were attending was not preaching the truth. They had God showed them that the church that they were a part of was not preaching the New Testament message that's
Yeah.
found in the book of Acts,
Yeah.
and they were willing, they were open and willing to leave the church that they were coming from because they saw the revelation. And but shortly after, they became um, critical
Mm.
of some of the way that they um, critical of not having been, invited by people or not having been brought into a certain, you know,
Yeah.
circle, or, you know, they began to be sort of critical about the various elements of the way that the church, I don't know,
Yeah. Just
everything.
general. Yeah. Just general. Yeah.
Right. And and so in consultation, talking to and helping this church through this, I said, you know, my phrase to them, what, or, you know, to the people I was talking to, said, I said, you know, what this sounds to me like is, it sounds to me like some cultural Christians were open and got a revelation of the truth.
Yeah.
They were open, they got a revelation of the truth, but in their mind, it was not Jesus centric.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I've abandoned myself to follow Jesus and he is my singular focus now.
Yeah.
They had become so church centric. Instead of Christocentric, it was church centric.
Yeah.
And so discipleship is Christocentric.
Yeah.
Decisionship is church centric.
Yeah.
So they continued to be focused because they were coming from a church to a church. They were coming from false doctrine to truth, but they continued to be church centric. And it
Mm,
wasn't because the church they were coming to wasn't church Christocentric or Christ centric. It was because the the cultural Christian bias in North America has been so deeply
so true.
church centric.
Man, that's so true, bro. It's so true. And as you were talking there, I was thinking about, sometimes people will say like that church centric thing. People will say like, your relationship with God. Sometimes it's like a marriage, and over time it kind of starts. The emotion, the feeling starts to wane, and you see that a lot in churches where
Right.
people they come in on fire, whatever, and then life hits, and then that emotion wanes. Bro, if anybody could have experienced that, it would have been the disciples of Jesus.
Bro.
You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, we had him here. We sat down and had conversations, and he told us this and he told us that. He told us everything we need to know about the kingdom. He shared with like all of these things, and then he's gone. And
Mhm.
then you go from that and you go almost immediately into persecution. You go immediately into suffering, and you go into all these different places. And yet there was, again, this is why it wasn't just something that they did very clearly. It was something that was so deeply ingrained in them, which I think
Mhm.
as spirit-filled apostolics, we should have the advantage, because I think it's the spirit in us, right? It
Yeah.
was the spirit in them that continued, even though Jesus was no longer, gathering them around the fire and sharing with them, theological truths and revealing biblical principles, and he wasn't there doing that, but they had Jesus on the inside. And so you don't see this waning,
Right.
because it wasn't built on relationship or on emotion. It
Yeah.
wasn't built on just, I made a decision to follow Jesus, and then all of a sudden the pressures hit and whatever. Like it was this is just who we are. This is just
Mhm.
what is produced by somebody who is a disciple of Jesus. It
Yeah.
oozes out of you everywhere you go, every place you do. And so I do think what you said, that church centric piece
Yeah.
is the biggest
Yeah.
resistor,
Yep.
right? It's the biggest resistant to all of this, because everything gets redirected back to the church versus, again, this is not us being antagonistic towards church gatherings or towards the local church body. This is
Yeah.
just simply saying, if you have people that are every day, it just comes out of them,
Yeah.
this awe and wonder of Jesus and belief that he can do anything. He can change anybody. Everybody needs to experience this. You do that, then what's gonna happen is those people are gonna be connected to the body. They're gonna wanna be connected to the body. So this is not throwing shade at church. This is just simply saying what you said. We've directed it to, again, how can we make our church better? How can we make our church more attractive? How can we do all those kinds of things? Those things will always are always supremely inferior,
Yeah. The,
right?
yeah. I
To who
think,
Jesus is.
well, and and again, in simplest terms, what is, what is your calling card, right? Like in simplest terms,
Yeah,
what is the thing that what is the thing that you defer to in speaking to someone who's an unbeliever?
yeah,
Um, it is, and Chris, we could talk about, we could go through and talk about historically. I think the Catholic Church in the early stages, the fourth century, fifth century, sixth century, I think the Catholic Church, where they sort of outsourced personal witness to professional ministry. Jesus said
sure.
all of the all of the believers were to be priests. That was his desire in the Old Testament. He desired for Israel to be a nation of priests. And he and but then the Catholic Church said, created the priest laity gap. And I think that affected it.
Agree.
Um, I
Totally
think
agree with that.
I think comfort has replaced calling.
Mm,
I think,
mm. Man, and that
missional,
you could stop on that one for just a little bit,
yeah.
right?
I,
Because most of our prayer, most of our thoughts, most of the thing is about how do I make my life more comfortable versus
yeah,
fulfilling the calling.
yeah.
So good.
Missional living demands risk.
Yeah,
It's a possibility of loss in full surrender, but cultural Christianity kind of mutes the cost of followership. Like
sure.
cultural Christianity figures out a way to say, it's not our messaging. Boy, I know Jesus's message was basically come die with me, but in today's world, that's not a very marketable message.
Mhm.
And so it mutes the cost of followership, which I believe is part, I mean, practical theology. I think that's part of the reason why it's become decisionship, not discipleship. And
Yeah,
so, again, you know, Jesus is the good news, and there
yeah,
are principles and morals and whatever,
yeah,
but
yeah,
more and more and more, and I'm not going to I'm not going to take a swipe, and I hate to mention certain people, but I think you even watch somebody like TD Jakes over the years, his, early on in his ministry,
mhm,
his ministry was pretty Jesus centric. I
mhm,
mean, his messages, but as the years went on, his messages almost sounded like a blend of like the Bible and Oprah. Like
mhm,
like his messages sort of almost started sounding therapeutic,
mhm.
you know? And
Sure.
so and so I don't know, when I think about, okay, well, what do we need to do? And I know we're up against the clock here. So when I think about what do we need to do? I think the first thing that we need to do that is first to really cause people to understand in the local church, you know, ask the question, is Jesus the center of your life? That today what happens is we invite people into volunteerism, and then we ask them to make a commitment around the church.
Yeah,
We invite people to volunteerism and say, well, you need to put the church at the center of your life. The church should be the center of your life. And so you need to make decisions. If you're going to make a decision about going on vacation, you need to make a decision based upon what's going on at the church. Check your calendar against what's going on at the church calendar. Make sure that, right, all of those things I think are great things, especially for leaders. But here's the deal, that can't be the focus. The
yeah,
focus has to be, are you making every decision in your life a
yeah,
decision as a result of the lordship of Jesus Christ over everything that you are and have?
yeah,
And so I think that we need to begin to reiterate a Christocentric discipleship model. Is your life about Jesus? Is it about pleasing Jesus? Is that what your focus is on? Or is Jesus in every conversation and relationship and every space of life? You're bringing Jesus to these people. It's, I've heard people say before, you can't lead people to Jesus, and you can't win people to Jesus till you win them to yourself. Well, I'm not the main event here,
Right.
And
Right.
so
People can
anyway,
get disappointed.
I think if we could teach our leaders to model a life where Jesus is their central obsession,
Mhm.
that Jesus is not just our theological figurehead, that Jesus is not just the fount
Yeah.
of truth and the fount of doctrine, but Jesus is the person of Jesus Christ is our central obsession in our lifestyle. Those are I think, some pretty dramatic things that we need to,
Sure. Or the fount of blessing. He's just the fount of your blessing,
there you go.
right?
Yeah.
So I think here's the question, Ken. We'll just kind of close with this today.
Okay.
Here's the question I think every spirit-filled believer needs to ask
Okay.
is I'm going to use the word natural, and I don't mean like physical, carnal, whatever. Like right now, what is your natural reflex to everything that happens in life?
Yeah.
If your natural reflex is not Jesus, then what that tells us is, and again, I understand practical living. I understand, whatever. But at the end of the day, our reflex to everything should be,
Bubba.
and you hear it, we joke, okay? We joke about the elders, but the elders would say, if you're having marital problems, the elders would say, look, G.A. Mangan, don't come to me until you've prayed 7
Yep.
days and
Yeah.
fasted. What
Take it
was
to
that?
Jesus and tell me what Jesus is saying.
Take it to Jesus. Tell me what Jesus is saying, and then we'll talk about it and we'll discuss it because he's got the answer. And that wasn't. Here's the thing, Ken. I think sometimes the message got messed up. That was not absolving any responsibility to help people to grow in the relationship with God. It was a reflex that says Jesus is the solution. He's the
What's our
solution for
what's
your
our first focus?
right. And
He's
I,
your
I
answer. I can point you to Jesus. My job is to point you to Jesus.
yeah,
He's your answer. And let me just final this, and then you can close it out. I think that as we work through and walk through and talk through these kinds of things, I think that when Jesus becomes first and foremost, this is crazy. I don't like. I'm not a big fan
yeah,
of some cute movement things, and sometimes they're the stuff that we do, the movements that come along and they're like promoting Jesus. I'm going to tell you right now, the WWJD stuff
yeah.
is powerful.
Sure.
What would Jesus do?
Right.
What would Jesus say? What would Jesus want you to? What would like, what's the Jesus response? I mean, I
Yeah.
love that idea that says until we get there and understand that Jesus is the focus and Jesus is the central thing, how are we going to? How are we? Because here's the thing: when Peter said, when we made known to you, we're telling you the things that we saw, handled, touched with our own eyes, our own hands. These are the things that we experienced personally.
Yeah.
And so that's why people say, let me take you to Jesus or point you to Jesus or, come see a man. Why? Because he was the central figure in their transformation. And so if we can make Jesus the central figure in our transformation, our personal life, and our personal devotion, then we're going to do a better job at pointing people to Jesus. And I think that's why the New Testament church, even post resurrection and ascension,
Yeah.
pointed people to Jesus because he was still central in their lives.
Yeah. So good. So good. Appreciate everybody being a part today. Some great comments. We weren't able to get to those today. We apologize about that, but some great comments. Certainly appreciate that. I think Kim Bastarkey closing it out. Proverbs 16:3, commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. And I think that's obviously, we know that that's so true and so important. So thank you so much for being a part of this discussion today, being part of the conversation. And you can check us out, all of the social media sites. Check out all of the information. If you're a pastor and would love to just talk to us about how do we help create this kind of culture. That's really what we're after, Ken, is how do we help create this kind of culture? We're not the
Yeah.
answers. We don't have the expertise in it, but we've got experience. We've walked through it.
Mhm.
And so if you're interested in that, go to the dillinghamgroup.org. It's got some information there. You can fill out a form. We'd love to get a hold of you and talk to you about how we could help in that journey. So thanks again for being a part of this conversation. We look forward to coming back to you next Tuesday around